Okay, so here we are. In terms of the record here function, I'm going to just play this from the beginning. Okay, so you should be able to already see my screen here right now. So we're going to look at the rubric requirements for the IA. Okay, so I'm going to try and do this as quickly as I can. So the first part of the guidance is you have to write 3 IAs. Okay, 3 IAs are required from you from 3 different parts of the course. So we do an IA on micro, we do an IA on macro, and we do an IA on international trade. And the reason we do those 3 IAs is because micro, macro, and international trade are the easiest ones to do. Development economics is a bit more tricky because you have to get the diagrams don't fit as well. 1 year I've done development economics, but I find it a bit more difficult. Now, if you want to do development economics, there's nothing to stop you, but we may not have covered the theory, so you probably won't choose to do that. Okay, the first thing, so what is the IA? So essentially what you have to do, you have to find an article, a news article from a newspaper, and you have to write an economic commentary on that article. Okay, so each commentary, as I said, must be based on a different part of the course. The word limit is 750. You must not exceed the word limit, but the minimum is no longer specified. Now, I mean, the minimum, I mean, you wouldn't be able to do a good IA in less than 650 words for sure, because you wouldn't be able to do the analysis and evaluation because you need a certain amount of words to be able to do that. And 750 is probably the optimal. Okay, right. So things that are not included are things that have changed. You can do an acknowledgements page. You can do a table of contents page. These are not included in the word count. You can draw diagrams. Labels of 5 words or fewer are also included in the word count. Headings and diagrams of 10 words or fewer. If it's more than 10 words, it is included in the word count. But if you've headings in your diagrams that are 10 words or fewer, they're not included. Now, of course, all diagrams have to have headings. So you should have figure 1 and then a heading on the diagram as well, whatever the diagram is. Statistical data is not included. Equations or formulas or calculations are not included. Citations, which, if used, must be in the body of the commentary. Don't put them as footnotes. Put them in the body of the commentary if you're citing something. References, which, if used, must be in the footnotes or endnotes. Okay, right. Now, let me just see this. Okay, so the basics. So yes, as I said again, each student must complete 1 portfolio, right? The portfolio is made up of 3 commentaries: micro, macro, and international trade. 3 commentaries. Each commentary comes from a different part of the course, right? They're marked individually. So this year I've just uploaded all the commentaries for my seniors. All their commentaries are marked individually. So they might even have different markers. I'm not sure how it works, the process works exactly, but they may have different markers for each commentary. They're marked individually, and you have to get the extracts from the newspaper or journal or internet cannot be in a textbook or other report or from a television or radio program. So it cannot be from a television or radio. It has to be from a newspaper, a journal, or the internet, right? These could be current issues, but they may include material published up to 6 months before the start of the course. Now, the IB has a rule as well, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes, where you should really be writing the commentary within 6 months of when the article is published, but definitely not more than a year, because if it's written more than a year, then you lose marks on that. Students are strongly advised to use diagrams, so you need to use diagrams to analyze your article. And also, students will not be able to get full marks without doing this. So you won't be able to get full marks without drawing diagrams. And of course, as I said, for both HL and SL, it's worth 20% of your IB score. Okay. Okay, so each commentary, as I said, must address different part of the curriculum, and you should try and apply a broad range of economic theory from the different parts of the IB course. And the portfolio should be completed throughout the course, not just at the beginning or the end. And obviously, you're going to work on it now. We're hopefully going to get 3 of them done this year. And of course, you need to write it you need to word process it. You're not going to write it by hand, okay? So how this works as well, we can look at some samples from the OCC. The OCC is the IB, where the IB keeps some exemplar work. We'll look at some of those, and we'll do some marking of those commentaries. We'll look at some examiner comments as well. Okay. So one of the best ways to understand what should be included in each commentary is to look at sample IAs, which we will do in a while, right? Okay, so there's basically essentially 5 different criteria that you have to look at. You've got to look at relevant theory relating to the article. That could involve whatever the theory is, analysis of the theory, right? You have to analyze the theory. You've got to explain what the theory means. You've got to draw diagrams to support economic theory and to help analyze the article. And you've got to use key terminology with specific terms defined. Now, how many terms should you define? Well, I don't think you should do more than 3, probably. Could do 2 at the start of the article, and if you feel there's a term that you need to define, and usually the terms you define will be the terms that are in the article. So it's always a good idea to get articles that have terms you can define in them. And then evaluation as well, evaluation of the theory towards the end, justifying what you've said, looking at the unintended consequences, the problems with your solution, for example, a lot of things like this, right? Now, I'm going to go through this in a moment with the actual rubric as well. Okay. Okay, so right now, I'm just going to go back and I'm going to open the rubric again on my computer here. So you can have a look. Okay, so here is the official rubric from the IB. Sorry. Okay, so here is the rubric from the IB. Now, this rubric, you can see, has the 5 criterion. Criterion A is diagrams. That has 3 marks. Criterion B is terminology. It has 2. Criterion C is application. Application looks at how are you applying the article. Are you doing it continuously throughout the article? So you need to show that you're applying the article. One good way to do it is to maybe use a quote, put it in italics, and parentheses, and then write quote the article and then analyze the quote. That's quite a good way to do it. And then we have analysis and evaluation. Analysis is 3 marks and evaluation is 4 marks. Each commentary is worth 3 marks each. So, each commentary is worth 14 marks. And the 14 marks for the commentary is obviously 1 of 3. So you multiply 3 by 14, you get 42. And then there's 3 extra marks then called what we call rubric requirements. I'll talk about those in a moment. But let's start with the first one, diagrams. To score well in the diagrams, the diagrams have to be accurate. That means they have to be accurately drawn. They should be accurately labeled, and they should include full explanations. We use a software called Graph Sketcher here at DAA to draw them. It's really, really good. And the only problem is it's used on a Mac. There are software you can use on a PC as well, but usually the Mac software, OmniGraph Sketcher, I'll provide you a link to that. That's also available. Okay, but that's very good for drawing diagrams. And as I said, what you need to do, you need to correctly label the diagrams, draw them properly. They have to be appropriate as well. So the diagrams need to be accurate and they need to be appropriate to explain what you're trying to explain. Okay, the second thing is terminology. Obviously, economics is a subject and it's a separate subject. It has its own language. So you have to use terminology that's appropriate to the commentary, which means essentially that you're using economic terminology, you're defining the terms in the commentary, and you're letting the reader know you understand the economic significance of those terms. And as I said, it's a good idea to define words that are in the actual commentary. Application, again, for the application criteria, you're showing the examiner that you understand, you're showing the examiner that you really understand how to apply the article in your commentary. So, and you're using appropriate theories, and you're using it throughout the commentary, not just at the beginning or at the end, right? You're using it throughout. So the analysis criteria looks at the extent to which you can develop appropriate economic theories and concepts in the context of the article. So you need to show that you're explaining all your theories, drawing diagrams, and you're explaining them effectively. You're using all your relevant economic theory to explain the article. And then evaluation. So evaluation is how you make judgments, okay? So the evaluation criteria says judgments are made that are supported by effective and balanced reasoning. To get 4 marks, you have to do that. You have to show that whatever judgment you make about the article, it's based on effective and balanced reasoning. So things like you can look at is the unintended consequences. If you're talking about a policy, you can look at the unintended consequences of that policy. Okay, you can look at you can look at unintended consequences. If it's, I'll take you through how to do a micro IA later. I'll do one on a video on a micro IA as well. You can also see that. Yeah. So if you don't support what you're saying with evidence, it's going to be more difficult to justify high marks on the evaluation criteria. The evaluation criteria is 4 marks, so it's quite important. And if you can do good evaluation, it can be a really good way to boost your grade on the IA. Yeah, and the last 3 marks. Well, you only get the last 3 marks at the end when you submit your portfolio. So we won't be doing that this year, but you should still keep them in mind. So the criteria assesses the extent to which you meet the 5 rubric requirements. So essentially, the first one is it shouldn't exceed 750 words, right? The article is based on a different section of the syllabus, right? 3 different sections. Each article is taken from a different and appropriate source. They have to be a different source. You cannot have the Gulf News. You cannot have the Financial Times all the time. And you cannot have, actually, in terms of the sources of the articles, it's best not to use a very economics-y article. You're better off using sometimes a non-economics article and then applying economics to it, because then you can really get analysis in. And sometimes the shorter the article, the better, because you can really get into it if it's shorter. If the article is very long, it's more difficult. And each article was published no earlier than 1 year before the writing of the commentary. So if the article was published, let's say 3 years ago, you can write a commentary on it. It has to be written no less than a year before you get the commentary. And again, the portfolio, each portfolio, you have to have a cover sheet, and there's a form called a 3 CSE form, which we'll fill up next year. But essentially, that's how you do it. You put a cover sheet on each commentary, and you say on the cover sheet, you say who the author was, who the publisher was, date of publication, date the commentary was written, and you also say the word count as well on the cover sheet, okay, for each individual commentary. Okay, now I think that's it in terms of the rubric is concerned.